Iran has warned that any country helping the United States tighten economic pressure on it could face retaliation. And Tehran is not only talking about sanctions. It says it could stop oil from leaving the entire Gulf region, even through routes that bypass the Strait of Hormuz. So what can Iran actually do? And will its neighbors risk joining Washington's campaign? The warning came from Mohsen Rezai, the secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. He urged countries, especially Iran's neighbors, to stay out of what Tehran calls America's economic war. Rezai said any country that helps impose economic restrictions on Iran would be treated as an enemy and could face what he called seismic retaliation.
اگر ایشون بخواد حالا یه کارایی انجام بده، مقابله به مثل زلزله وار خواهد بود. اولا به تمام کشورهای اطراف و کشورهای دنیا میگیم که وارد جنگ اقتصادی در کنار آمریکا نشه. هر کشوری که شریک بشه در ایجاد محدودیت اقتصادی علیه ما او رو دشمن تلقی میکنیم.
His comments came after US President Donald Trump promised to launch Washington's most crushing economic operation yet against Iran. Trump also threatened tremendous economic consequences for any country that provides Iran with a lifeline. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent put it even more bluntly.
Today we are launching Operation Economic Outcast to foreclose every other option available to the Iranian regime. Treasury has mapped every node, every facilitator, and every network that Iran has used to smuggle oil and evade sanctions. Beginning today, the actions of Treasury and other agencies will tighten the noose and block every potential source of revenue that funds the IRGC and the evil Iranian regime. We are enforcing a zero leakage approach. There will be no minimal breathing space for the regime to rebuild its capacity to inflict terror against America and the world. The final refuge of this regime is the mistaken conclusion of nations that still finance the Iranian threat in the hopes of evading it. It is no longer acceptable to operate in the gray spaces of this conflict. Countries cannot claim they are blind to enabling this activity. Iran's enablers purchase, transport its petroleum. They facilitate the flow of its finances through exchange houses and free trade zones. They welcome Iran's flights and maintain registries on its behalf. They turn a blind eye to seaborne fuel transfers and overland transits. They condone illicit use of their banks, all the while concealing the extent of their complicity. The president is making phone calls to world leaders with specific requests to cease their interactions with the regime. We are already seeing results.
He said countries were either with Washington or against it. That message was also aimed at China, which buys more than 80% of Iran's oil shipments. But Iran says this is about much more than economic pressure. President Masoud Pezeshkian says the country is in a full-scale economic, military and security war with the United States.
ما در جنگ تمام عیار اقتصادی، نظامی و امنیتی قرار گرفتیم. خیلی راحت میگه که ما کوبنده ترین و یا وحشتناک ترین تحریم رو داریم بر ایران اعمال میکنیم و ما ایستادیم و داریم تلاش میکنیم که در مقابل این جنگ نابرابر بتونیم خدمتگزار مردم.
And Iranian officials have now explained how they could respond. Rezai described a three-stage plan. First, Iran would speak to countries cooperating with Washington and ask them to step back.
البته اول باش مذاکره میکنیم، جلسه میذاریم، میگیم برید کنار، صفتون از آمریکا جدا.
If they refused, Iran would target their interests.
اگر عمل نکردن میزنیم، منافع اون کشور رو میزنیم.
And then comes the threat with the biggest global consequences. Iran says it could prevent oil from leaving the Gulf, including through routes outside the Strait of Hormuz. Hormuz is one of the world's most important energy routes. In peacetime, roughly a fifth of global oil and gas exports pass through it. Iran has blockaded the strait during the war and used access to it as leverage in negotiations with Washington. At the same time, the United States has placed Iranian ports under a naval blockade, restricting Tehran's international trade. But Saudi Arabia and other Gulf exporters also have pipelines and ports that allow some oil to bypass Hormuz. That is why Iran's warning about alternative routes matters. it is probably referring to shipments passing through the al-Mandeb Strait and into the Red Sea. Saudi Arabia has relied more heavily on this route since shipping through Hormuz was disrupted. So Tehran is saying that bypassing Hormuz may not keep Gulf oil exports safe. Iran could also target American interests across the Middle East. The United States operates military facilities in more than a dozen locations across the region, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Thousands of American troops are also stationed in countries such as Jordan. Iranian forces have already attacked US military facilities and civilian sites since the war began on February 28.
Iran cannot unilaterally block all Gulf oil exports because there are multiple routes, mostly through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal, so on and so forth. Iran only controls the Strait of Hormuz, and that has been choked for a while, but that hasn't stopped anyone from completely exporting oil. And even if Iran does that, it's going to hurt its industry more than anyone else because Iran directly depends on direct or indirect exports of fuel, so that's going to hurt them more. So I don't think complete stoppage of oil from Gulf is even possible.
Two ideas seem to be shaping Iran's new approach. The first is preemption. This means Iran could strike before it believes a threat is carried out. The second is disproportionate retaliation. That means responding on a scale designed to make any attack extremely costly. In other words, Iran may not wait for new sanctions or military action to take effect. Even preparations by another country could be seen as a threat and trigger a response. For Gulf states, this creates a difficult choice. Many of them are close US partners and host American forces, but they also share waters, trade routes, and security risks with Iran. They have already suffered economically because of Iranian attacks and the disruption of shipping through Hormuz. Joining Washington's campaign could expose their ports, pipelines, energy facilities, and other infrastructure to further attacks. But their recent efforts to improve relations with Iran are also coming under pressure. The UAE restored diplomatic relations with Iran in 2022, but last week it imposed a trade embargo after accusing Iran of carrying out a missile attack. Iran denies responsibility. Saudi Arabia and Iran also agreed to restore relations in 2023 under a deal brokered by China. For both sides, maintaining relations appeared safer than permanent confrontation. The war has put that idea under serious pressure, but it has not destroyed it completely. Gulf governments may oppose Iran's military actions, but they also know they cannot avoid dealing with Iran. Iran is their neighbor regardless of who controls the White House.
آمریکایی که قرار بود به کمک ایرانیان بیاد داره از هر ابزاری استفاده میکنه برای مجازات ایرانیان صرفاً به یک دلیل، به دلیل پافشاریشون بر حاکمیت و استقلال ملی و سیادت و کرامت خودشون. در این زمینه حتما هشدارهای لازم داده میشه، به خاطر اینکه هر گونه همدستی با آمریکا در پیشبرد اقدامات تجاوزکارانش ایران حتما تبعات خودش رو خواهد داشت. ایران از همه ظرفیت‌های چند جانبه برای مقابله با تحریم‌های اقتصادی استفاده خواهد کرد. سفر عمان هیچ ارتباطی به این نداره، فقط از لحاظ زمانی تقریباً همزمان شده، قرار هست فردا انجام بشه. هم در رابطه با روابط دو جانبه قرار هست بحث بشه و هم در رابطه با موضوعات مرتبط با امنیت تنگه هرمز و مسیرهای تردد، خب به عنوان دو دولت ساحلی این آبراه.
And few governments in the region want the Iranian state to collapse. The instability that follows could spread across borders, disrupt energy exports, and deepen the war. There's also very little room for another prolonged confrontation. Global oil inventories remain low after months of disruption. A wider attack on Gulf exports, especially one affecting both Hormuz and the Red Sea, could put even more pressure on oil supplies and prices. Iran, of course, has lived under different forms of sanctions since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The United States froze Iranian assets, stopped importing Iranian oil, and gradually restricted trade and investment. During the 1990s, Washington expanded those measures to Iran's energy sector. It also began targeting foreign companies that invested in the country. From 2006, the United Nations imposed sanctions linked to Iran's nuclear program. The European Union introduced restrictions of its own. Then came the 2015 nuclear agreement. Under that deal, Iran agreed to limits on its nuclear activities in return for sanctions relief. But Trump withdrew the United States from the agreement in 2018 and restored sanctions under his maximum pressure campaign. His administration later targeted Iran's oil, petrochemical, metals, and financial sectors. It also designated the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a foreign terrorist organization. The Biden administration kept most of those restrictions in place, and last September, UN sanctions were reimposed over Iran's nuclear program. So the latest US measures would add to decades of economic pressure. But there is one major difference this time. These sanctions are being introduced during an active regional war. Major shipping routes are already disrupted, and Gulf states are caught between two adversaries.
تلاش زیادی کردن در طی مدت و تلاش کردن که عزم مردم ایران و مسئولین کشور رو امتحان کنن و هر بار هم شکست خوردن و ظاهراً دوباره خواستن این شکست دیگری رو هم امتحان بکنن و ما برای این در واقع برنامه‌هایی که دارن از قبل مدت‌ها قبل منتظر این ایام بودیم که اینها می‌دونستیم که چه برنامه‌هایی رو دارن. همونطور که در صحبت پیشین عرض کردم دولت یه برنامه 2 ساله‌ای رو داره و کاملا آماده هستش و آماده بود برای اینکه این اتفاقات بیفته. بله واقعا به مردم آسیب زیادی وارد شد، ما کاملا درک میکنیم تورمی که به مردم تحمیل کرد، مجموعه اقداماتی که از سال گذشته ایجاد کردن اینو کامل ما درک میکنیم. اصلا اینطور نیستش که ما بگیم همچین آثاری نداشته. ما کاملا خودمون رو همدرد مردم میدونیم، میفهمیم تورم یعنی چی، میفهمیم فشار ارز یعنی چی، میفهمیم کمبود یعنی چی، ولی تمام تلاش دولت این بود که جلوی این تلاش‌های مذبوحانه‌ای که می‌کردن که این شریان‌های مالی و شریان‌های تجاری رو قطع بکنن رو جلوشو گرفت. طبیعتاً اونها می‌خوان که حمله تروریستی اقتصادی رو به ما داشته باشن. ما هم ابزارهای خودمون رو داریم، ما هم بازی رو بلدیم. این دفعه هم دیگه فکر نکنن که پدافندی خواهد بود و ما فقط دفاع خواهیم کرد. منتظر حمله هم از طرف ما باشن. عرض کردم دنیای تک قطبی دیگه گذشته. همینطور که دیدین 2 تا از کشورهای بزرگ دنیا نپذیرفتند این تحریم‌های جدید رو و این برنامه جدید رو و حاضر نشدن که زیر بار برن و ما تقریبا اطمینان داریم که بسیاری دیگر از کشورها هم یا به صورت رسمی یا غیر رسمی نخواهند پذیرفت و انشالله شکست خواهند خورد.
Iran wants countries to consider one thing before they help Washington. They may also have to pay the price for Tehran's response. The question now is whether that warning will keep them away from Trump's campaign or push the region towards another round of escalation.